Joining us now is Timothy Snyder, professor of history at Yale University. You know him on this show primarily as the author of this seminal book on tyranny, which became very famous during the first Trump administration. His newest book is called On Freedom. Professor Tim Snyder, it's really good to see you. Thank you for coming in.
Happy to see you.
Let me just ask you, I talked a little bit about the idea of oligarchy in the first segment. I just wanted to ask if I talked about that in a way that resonates with you, or if you think I got that wrong, or if you had any thoughts about that.
No, I thought it was absolutely right. I mean, it was the ancient Greeks who said oligarchs are going to be stronger than Democrats because they will collect the money and they'll have the propaganda. They were right. It's always going to be a problem for democracy. And then we borrow the word from the Russians, who have seen this story happen in the 1990s. Weak, aging president surrounded by rich, clever people who fight amongst themselves, divide up all the goodies, and bring the state down.
Bringing the state down is important for people who care about the government. It's also important for people who are concerned about their everyday lives. There are things that the government does, even if we don't appreciate our government, that we will miss when they're gone. And if the oligarchs capture the government so that it only serves their purposes, the American people will be worse off and poorer and less safe, and ultimately dislocated from the levers that we can currently use to make our government more effective and more responsive. Right?
Yeah, Americans like to think that we're special, but oligarchs in our country will always have more in common, and they will always be more affectionate and loyal towards oligarchs in other countries. Mm-hmm. And so if we want to see how things can go in our country, we have to see the world through their eyes, which is a world of billionaires, not of citizens. All the people that Trump admires abroad rule countries which are less effective, or people have shorter lives, and where they're poorer.
When you look at the examples from our contemporaries in other countries who are contending with systems like this, but also the history of this type of government, are there lessons to be learned about how to stop a slide into oligarchic domination, how to resist it, or how to try to retain our rights and the things that we enjoy about our government against those kinds of forces?
I think, first of all, we have to be able to keep it positive, not in the sense of saying everything's great. It's not. It's terrible. They're trying to break the government, which means breaking the country. But positive in the sense of we should have a shadow cabinet. We should have a list of people who, alternatives to these same people, so we can look and say, hey, this person could have been Secretary of the Treasury. That person could have been Secretary of Defense. Have those people so that they can give positive alternatives as people and give positive alternatives as policy, but also to have someone so that the journalists can talk to them for the next 4 years. So we don't both sides everything. So it's not like vaccines plus minus, but hey, let's talk to somebody about how good vaccines actually are and what we actually could do. Let's talk to someone about how we can prevent car crashes and what that would look like. We have to think about opposition in the sense of what an America could look like if we had other people, if we had a real elite. More practically, the states can make it harder for oligarchs to function, and we can look at other countries to help us make it harder for people like Musk to function. Those things can happen too.
When you mean look to other countries, just talking about what do you mean there in terms of?
I mean that the things that Musk and our oligarchs do are sometimes illegal in other countries, and we should observe that and be supportive of that. But it's the states that actually control a lot of financial flows, and so states that are concerned about oligarchy can do things too.
What do you tell people who feel overwhelmed by, as you say, how bad it is right now? I think that one of the things that has rocked a lot of people since the election, even people who didn't like the election result, is that the sort of the worst things that you could imagine, particularly in terms of nominees, like Tulsi Gabbard for the Director of National Intelligence is kind of the worst choice that you could imagine. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for Health Secretary is, I think, the worst choice you could imagine. Mm-hmm. FBI Director Kash Patel, definitely the worst choice that you could imagine. And the succession of those, like it wasn't just Matt Gaetz, it was all these others that are as bad as I think it could probably get. I think is overwhelming to people in a sense. And it also cumulatively makes people feel like, well, I'm not even sure which of these to focus on. Maybe I shouldn't focus on any of this and I should just check out.
Yeah, I think we can start with none of these people should hold any position of responsibility at all in any country at any level. That should be the starting point. We can't normalize it. The second thing is we can classify them. Some of them will destroy the government because they're incompetent. Some of them will destroy it because of conflicts of interest. Some will destroy it because of ideology. And some, like Musk, will try to destroy it because they want to pick up the pieces. So we can classify them. That can make us feel calmer. And then in terms of what we actually do about it, we have to try to get over the line as many of these people as possible, like respectable Republicans should not be voting for these people. And then once they do, we have to move on to thinking about the 6 terrible months that follow, chronicling that. The Democrats should be thinking not about this lost election, but about what things look like in June of 25 and how things could be so much better than the terror that this group is going to bring us to.
And that's in part that idea of a shadow government that Democrats are saying should be standing up, or respectable Republicans or never Trump Republicans should be stepping up and saying, no, this is actually what the Director of National Intelligence should be doing in this situation. This is what the Transportation Department should be doing in this situation.
I think Harris or Pelosi or somebody else should actually have a list of people who are the shadow cabinet, whose job it is to talk to the press every day, not just about what's wrong, but actually about, hey, what the government could do. Because it's that lack of imagination. When things get terrible, we're going to think, okay, terrible, let's have less terrible. But we should be thinking about, hey, we actually have great people in this country, and we could have had a much better version of all of this, and we can get to that.
Timothy Snyder, professor of history at Yale University, the author of the books On Tyranny and On Freedom. It's an honor to have you here, and thank you for coming in person.
It is my pleasure. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.